Yeah, how much time do we have?
Yeah. I found what you
Um,
really want to talk about. Okay, great. Welcome back to Between the Forks, where we go deep into the stories and strategies behind the machines that move industry. I'm your host, Sean Rains, and today we're talking to Robert Bond, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Trilift Industries. We're going to explore what makes Trilift dealerships truly elite. We're going to dive into the world of forklifts and material handling, and we're going to hear firsthand from one of the industry's top minds. So, Robert, are you ready to get into this?
let's do it. Good to go.
I always like to kind of start at the beginning in these conversations, and I'm fortunate enough to get to talk to some of the brightest people in industry. Let's talk foundation. And that's kind of the origin story. You've been in this a long time. You've been a Clark dealer for decades. And when your father was first deciding to, hey, Clark's the sign that we're going to put on the building, what was it about Clark's engineering, maybe their chassis, something that made your family say that, you know what, this is a truck we want to stake reputation on?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like anything, I believe Clark has been a legacy brand in the industry. They've been a staple in helping build what our material handling industry looks like over the last 100+ years. And normally that's something that I can try and ride those coattails. It's benefit for my team, benefit for me. Frankly, having that historic background from a Clark brand and being able to build on that as a Trilift brand now, I think benefits our team as a whole. So it's very exciting to be able to represent that brand. And that's kind of why we're leaning so far in with the Clark product.
That makes sense. So Clark talks a lot about this built to last. It's like a slogan for them. In a world, especially these days, of a lot of throwaway products, I don't know if you've watched that episode of, I don't know, it's something about Amazon and Netflix, and it kind of makes us feel like a lot of throwaway consumerism is not necessarily always good for us. But Clark is nested in, like, they're nested I-beam masts, they're fully welded frames. Those are the things that they talk about around built to last that matter to them. When you're up against other competitors that are maybe cheaper, lighter, how do you use that heavy duty, like, build quality maybe to persuade people, win arguments, especially with people that are making the financial decisions? Let's say a CFO who's thinking that all I care about is the price tag.
Again, a conversation pops up all the time. Generally we'll try to navigate away from just the initial price tag, right? Conversation, if it could be steered now towards the difference between price and cost, right? Price is what you're going to pay today. Cost is what you're exposed to long term. If we can kind of re-angle the conversation around that total cost of ownership and what their exposure will be long term and the ability to support the product, it kind of takes us out of that rat race of just driving to the bottom and getting the cheapest product possible. I'd say more now than ever in the last 5 years post-COVID, we tend to have those conversations more and more often every single week with customers, because there has been a big influx in products at that lower price tier that might not necessarily have the same product support or the same engineered safety features that the Clark product does.
Which all of that's really important in this line of work. Let me shift this a little bit to something that I think put your name on the marquee, which is the 2024 Dealer of the Year win. So you guys were named the 2024 Clark Dealer of the Year. That's a big honor, pretty big deal. Doesn't happen by accident. Some people might think that doesn't. So what makes Trilift a uniquely standout dealership in your mind? How did you orient your business to end up with a win like that?
Yeah. For us specifically, I think something that really sets us apart is we lead with rental, right? So we heavily invest in our rental fleet. Nothing goes in our rental fleet that's wholesale, used, trade-in. Everything goes in brand new. So one of the things that I'd say really sets us apart is the ability to not only be a Clark distributor, but also a primary Clark customer, right? We can't represent or sell or distribute a brand that I also can't rely on for my own rental fleet. So both being a distributor for Clark for our end users, but also being a customer of Clark for our own rental fleet is a primary reason why I think that we've been able to set ourselves apart a little bit in terms of how we go to market, and part of the reason why we won that award for 2024. Hopefully we'll continue to work on winning those awards in the future as well.
Yeah, that is, I think, a brilliant part of strategy. When you have that much experience with the product itself through the rental fleet, you're going to certainly have a leg up on people that are just working on the sales perspective. Like you're going to be so familiar because of the usage and use cases that you guys get to manage. So that's I think really important for people to understand. This is a little bit of a part of the conversation that I wanted to have with you. I was looking forward to is I noticed on your profile that you have this genuine interest in blockchain technology, which is, I think, a little rare for a forklift executive. Do you see a future where that kind, like blockchain's secure, transparent data ledger, that will be helpful in verifying like maintenance history or resale value, things like that of a forklift? Or is it even beyond that? I'm very curious, like how is technology playing a role in customer decisions about material handling? Do you see that evolving in the future? Do you see that, is that a Clark Telematics thing? How do all these things kind of fit into the way you're seeing the world through blockchain?
Yeah. How much time do we have?
Yeah. Well, I found what you really want to talk about. Okay, great.
I think, I guess I'll kind of digest the question there in a couple pieces. I mean, I absolutely think that the buying process has changed and technology is a big component of that. I think the sales process in our industry will continue to be person-person, face-to-face, but how to get into that face-to-face meeting now and how to portray value in yourself, your brand, your company, and the OEMs we represent, in this case, primarily Clark. So the technology introduction into our industry, I would say is still just the tip of the iceberg. When I discuss blockchain and blockchain decentralized applications with most people in our industry, I tend to get a glossy eye look. People kind of zone out a little bit, but I mean, I do think that within the next 5 to 10 years, if not shorter than that, we will see some sort of blockchain enabled structures within our industry. That could be, I mean, I'd say the easiest realm would be maintenance records and documenting how a fleet's being utilized, how to make it more efficient, proper runtime or fleet rotations as needed based on cost per runtime hour. But I think there's also opportunities to take that further, right? I mean, you could look at tokenizing an asset as well, just like we're looking at some companies right now are doing this with apartment buildings and commercial and industrial buildings, but the ability to tokenize an asset where you effectively break up ownership across, let's just call it smart contracts to keep it simple. But now that creates a different layer of engagement and onus for the support and longevity of those assets because it's not just drilled down into one bucket. So I do believe that in the next few years, we will see that. It's already happening in other industries. I think material handling is a bit behind that technology curve. But with partners like Clark and the telemetry that Clark Smart's bringing to market, I think we will see that continue to push forward. Right now, we're looking at capturing data, impact monitoring, pre-shift inspections, geolocation of assets within a warehouse. But, taking that data, overlaying it with customer cameras within the warehouse, using AI now to take a look at pallet positions that are not moving fast enough, operators that are not operating efficiently enough compared to their peers, either in the same division or different company divisions and branches. There's a lot that we will be able to do. But it's starting right now with the ability to capture that data through apparatuses like Clark Smart is going to drive that next step of technology evolution for us.
So you're obviously a very tech-forward guy, but you sell this heavy iron, like heavy equipment. How has the Clark S series with that smart dash and integrated tech helped you bridge the gap? Is it easier to sell a smarter truck to the new generation of warehouse managers?
I would say so. Just like historically, the salesman in our industry was the know-all be-all asset, right? A lot of the purchasing managers we speak to now are doing research online. They're pulling up multiple vendors. They're going through what they could find in product videos, spec sheets, customer testimonials, podcasts. So I think now having that technology bridge from an OEM like Clark, and then the safety features to supplement that on the back end, is how are we going to keep growing the brand? I'd say purchasing managers, fleet managers, warehouse managers now not only want just to have the equipment to be running, they want to know why it went down. So having things like the Clark Smart Dash, onboard diagnostics, and integrated telemetries, it could create that next wave of understanding for a buyer where it's not just about price, not just about what it costs to get parts or support, but understanding why the unit went down and how to try and prevent that in the future Clark kind of pre-bakes in some of those safety and technology options that makes that process and that conversation with the customer much easier.
Mm, that makes sense. I want to ask you a little bit about this. Well, I call it the Renegade Revolution. I've talked with the Clark team for months as they got prepared for a lot of this. For years, there's this trade-off that you bought an electric forklift for maybe indoor efficiency, but you kept the internal combustion truck for the heavy outdoor work. But Clark's addressed that, kind of attacking it, if you will, with this new S25XE Renegade. I think it's the first time they came up with a name like that, like Renegade, which is cool. Like, who has a forklift called Renegade? Clark does. It's pretty awesome. But it's designed to run outside in the rain and handle these steep grades. But with lithium power, how does the Renegade, in your mind, change the conversation with maybe the diesel diehard or these kind of fuel-oriented diehard customers? Is it finally the truck that kind of proves Clark Electric can handle the mud and the rain just as well as what it competes against? And I'm also curious to know what you think if you're hearing from customers that are interested in making that switch. These energy decisions are really big. They're always in the news. So love to get your perspective on what's been going on with the Renegade.
Yeah, no, I mean, just like anything for us, we start with rental. So Clark launches the Renegade this year. I think it's a phenomenal product so far based on what I've seen. And we went out and we bought our first batch to specifically put them in the rental fleet. Right. The idea is if I can't support a product or it doesn't live up to expectations, I'll find that out before I ever sell it to somebody. To your question about the Renegade changing the dynamic now with these diesel diehards, I think the conversation will now be easier than ever. Right. If we take a look at ROI calculations and you're spending $4 per gallon on diesel, I could get you down to 7 or 8 cents per kilowatt hour for charging that electric battery. It can really open up the window for conversations where historically maybe the price gap between lithium, lead acid, and then the IC product was so large that it was hard to get smaller fleet users or individual unit users to make that transition. With the Renegade product now, I believe we have a window where we could take advantage of not only major fleet users and what that fleet rotation looks like going from IC to electric, but also now individual users, right? If they're lower hours or they need an onboard charger to integrate without running 480 volt three-phase power to their facility, the Renegade kind of fills a gap now where historically I haven't had something to sell there. So I do look forward to seeing how this product continues to develop in the future. But like anything now, the first thing we've done is put it in the rental fleet and stage it to make it successful for not only us, but also our end users.
Yeah, I think it's also going to be really interesting to see, being somebody who is not as experienced in the forklift world as someone like you. I did get to see it, though, at Clark's brand new headquarters there in Texas, and it just looks awesome. I mean, it every feature on it's very, very well done. And so if from more of a lay person when it comes to forklifts and a guy that can have good conversations with people that are experts in this, I thought it was really impressive, just an amazing machine. So it's going to be really great actually for somebody like you and what TriLift does to get all the feedback from having that immediately in the rental fleet. I think that's going to be very interesting. During this conversation, I wanted to make sure that I would talk to you a little bit about the expansion of what TriLift is doing. And I don't know if you guys would consider it like maybe a port strategy, but TriLift continues and is continuing to grow with Clark, adding new territory to your footprint even this year, Charleston and Columbia. That's like heavy logistics and port country. And I'm curious to know from your perspective, what makes Clark the right brand dealerships can build a business around in this regard?
Yeah. You know, for us specifically, we have a wide range of customer mixes from North Carolina and South Carolina. There's a pretty big varying range there of why people buy what they buy and how they use it. Specifically, the South Carolina market down there and our focused expansion specifically with the Clark brand is being driven by the value proposition that Clark as a company has and how we've married up to that proposition. For example, a lot of that heavy industry port business, inland rail yards, and the little feeder companies that support all the major manufacturing that's coming to South Carolina often use diesel products, right? And Clark specifically, at least in our experience so far, they don't have any diesel models that have diesel particulate filters or the regen systems that often cause headaches for a lot of other brands, especially if you're used to the over-the-road apparatuses that also cause issues. But no Clark diesel product have DPF or regen systems. So if we get into a realm where operators are used to bypassing regen by clicking the button on their dash, which some brands allow, you end up locking up your whole system, and it's a very costly repair, where we could avoid that whole conversation and all the costs associated with it by sticking with the Clark product. And again, having those units in my rental fleet, if somebody is not familiar with the Clark product or hasn't bought it in the last 10, 15, 20 years, having the product on the floor, being a stocking dealer and heavily invested in the rental fleet is what we feel is going to be a hallmark of our success in the South Carolina market.
Love that. You guys also have I think, a unique but well-built culture. You're famous for, TriLift is famous for the no voicemail policy. A real person answers every time, which in this day and age, it seems like, I don't know, that's exactly what every single person wants. They don't want an AI, SDR, or some other function picking up the phone and walking you through until they hand you off to a human. And so as you expand with these new territories, how do you keep the family feel while backing it up with this big, maybe corporate, support that you get from a Clark brand?
Yeah. For us, if anybody has had to call and cancel cable or change insurance providers, the phone tree that you have to go through generally for an automated system can be very frustrating. Mm-hmm. It's not always cheap or effective to have live person answer the phone call every single time, but it's something that we felt was a fundamental for our business, right? Let's talk about the parts department, for example. If you call one of our, let's say, Raleigh or Greensboro branches, and for whatever reason, if parts people are out, they're on vacation, running inventory, picking parts for customer orders, and they can't answer the phone, that parts call will automatically roll to our next parts branch or our parts department in a different branch if needed to make sure that you automatically get a response. From a service standpoint and a parts standpoint, the ability to speak to somebody immediately when you have a issue, a downed unit, or some sort of frustration what's going on in your fleet, I think can be the difference in either earning and keeping that business or losing it entirely. So having that ability to speak to a live person at all times is something that I believe, one, leaves that personal family touch within the mix, but with the infrastructure in place to be a big company, if you will, to support major fleets, to respond in 4 hours or less, or offer 24/7 service if needed. So I think we're kind of providing the best of both worlds right now.
In an era of focus on customer experience, I think that what you guys do and having that reputation of picking up the phone is actually it might be arguably the best thing you could do to let people know that you care about giving them a good experience. You're there from the very beginning. You're not waiting to be, handed off. And what you just said is actually a nice segue into what I wanted to ask you about next, which kind of has to do with parts and operations. Your brother, Brian, I believe, runs parts and service side of the business as well. I know you guys are a perennial MHEDA MVP winner. From a sales perspective, how much confidence does it give you when you're walking into a deal knowing that Clark's parts availability is backing up promises that you're making? Does the uptime story help in closing deals or just making people comfortable? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, frankly, the idea of selling a brand of any kind, you have to sell internally and externally, right? So if the lack of parts availability, the inability to fix a unit, if warranty or warranty claim rates were extremely high, not only do you lose the customer base, you also lose your internal base. What I mean by is your technicians don't want to work on a product if they get looked at as the inability to fix it is their fault. If they can't get parts, if the service manager can't get warranty reclaimed, you end up losing your internal customers and your employees more often than not before you lose an external customer. So for parts from Clark, we in North Carolina and South Carolina, generally, if I place an order early afternoon, I'll get parts the next day, even via ground. So the ability to go through and look at what's our top 1,000 moving parts on our lift trucks, and can I get a 90, 93, 95% fill rate on those parts orders? And Clark is more often than not able to meet those needs. And again, if my unit, my rental fleet goes down, just like a customer unit down, the ability to source parts makes everybody's life easier. And I know Brian can appreciate that when he has those parts and service phone calls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think people oftentimes realize the kind of cascading downward negative effects that can happen if you don't have availability. It shuts a lot of things down, has a really tremendous effect that radiates across a whole organization, maybe multiple businesses. So, well, let's talk a little bit about safety. Clark, I think most people that know much about the Clark brand know that they have a huge legacy in safety. They were like first with safety innovations, the overhead guards, seat belts, automatic parking brakes. When you're selling to a safety conscious customer, maybe it's the safety manager of an operation, is there a specific Clark feature, maybe the parking brake alarm or visibility through the mast or something like that, that oftentimes seals the deal or people are very maybe interested in or it's kind of captivating to them?
Yeah, I touched on it briefly too, but like we just talked about, parts, again, critical. You have a safety issue, an accident, tip over, whatever it might be, the ability to source parts, get the unit up and running, and understand why it failed is key. So Clark Onboard Diagnostics, the Smart Dash, when you end up looking at the self-activated parking brake, for example, it's things that people take for granted, or like a hill hold feature if somebody parks on a ramp or an incline and they shouldn't. There are pre-built-in features with the Clark product that you don't have to go out of your way to try and spec out, quote, or get with engineering to figure out how to add it, because they've taken the time and engineering prowess to go ahead and include those. Things like the seat switches and operator comfort features when we're looking at how to properly complete a pre-shift inspection. Are access points easy to reach for an operator to take a look at? More often than not, operators are not going to dig any deeper than they have to. So making access points difficult is a non-starter for a lot of operators. So Clark, I think, has designed the product to not only be functional and withstand the test of time within an operation, but also create an environment where the product can be supported. You could get certificates of origin of where the products came from, what the mix of components are. And that's the type of thing that I think safety and compliance managers really need to arm themselves to defend themselves in case something does happen.
So I got to ask you this question. When it comes to safety features, do you ever, not that you get caught in a dopamine feeding scroll of forklift safety videos or lack of, but do you ever see those videos? I see them. I was not even going to ask. I was going to like not ask you this, but I'll see videos like that and think that I should have had a Clark. Because it literally is demonstrating a feature that doesn't exist on something that is causing what some people think are funny, but oftentimes those are really actually very, very, like, you're lucky that something worse didn't happen type of events. Do you ever see any of those and think, if you would have had this feature from a Clark truck, you wouldn't have had that problem?
Yeah, I see the videos. I see news articles about incidents all the time. I try not to chase that ambulance too much, but there is a serious conversation that has to be had about why these things are happening. Right? We're in a very safety conscious world right now. The cost for safety is not cheap, but one incident in your facility where somebody injures their back or breaks a bone or loses a finger because a safety apparatus either wasn't equipped properly or wasn't used properly will greatly eclipse the cost of initially deploying and maintaining a safe practice environment. So unfortunately, you see the videos, and I think we'll continue to see them long term. But with built-in features like Clark has, I think some of that could at least be balanced out in the long run, but it's still going to take a lot of manual intervention from operators and their management to make sure it stays in place.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Let me talk to you about what I would call the bond factor. It's generational stability. You, Brian, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but officially took over in 2022 as part of I believe, a 10-year plan. Clark is a company that's been around for over 100 years. Do you find that family-owned businesses, specifically in the Carolinas, connect better with you because you understand that and that your representation of brand with that type of longevity seems to be a point of connection?
Yeah, and I'd add one more to that. Actually, as of October this year, our sister Katie Bond also started as our CFO after several years managing and leading a team of tax accountants at Deloitte. So actually, all six of us now, both our parents, Bob and Karen, as well as Katie, Brian, Kevin, and myself, are now kind of taking over operations for the business, which is very exciting. And I do think that having the local personal family feel with the ability to support major fleets is something that drives our success. You know, I think the 100-year history for Clark is a primary factor, like I said, as to why we picked up the brand and we're so supportive of the brand right now. But I'm also really excited about the next 100 years. I mean, it's one thing to talk about what we've done in the past, but as a dealer, as a distributor, as a customer, it's very important for me to also know what that next story is. And Clark, I think right now, more so than many other OEMs, is focused on telling what that story is and what the plan is. Part of the reason I'm having this conversation right now is that long term, the ability to connect with the customer on a personal level, especially locally, with a brand that could support me at the national level if I need to, is something that will drive a difference for us and our end users.
That makes a lot of sense. And by the way, congratulations to getting your sister into that family business. I'm a big fan of family businesses, really big fan. That is not lip service. I'm a really big fan of it. There's a synergy and an understanding and a depth and a capability that comes inside of families that figure it out and how to get all of the calibration around how to operate a business. And I did my homework, and you've got a whole smart group of folks that are your family that seems to have equal value in being able to divide and conquer around all of the specific issues and areas of operation that requires expertise in a business. That's not easy for a lot of people to do outside of it being a family business. And the fact that you guys are doing it and continuing that legacy, I just applaud it. So congratulations on that. Just a couple more questions. I want to ask about something I would call like a gateway truck. If you had a customer who had never driven a Clark before, maybe they're running a competitor's fleet, maybe for a long time, 20 years, what is the one specific model? Maybe it's not a model, maybe there's something else, but a specific model or something in the lineup that you would want to put in front of somebody or demo them to change their mind like immediately?
That's a good question. Clark is coming out with a lot of models here this year, next year, and the following year. If I had to narrow that down to one right now to really make a difference, I'd say the Clark S25XE. Sit down, 3-wheel electric unit, 5,000 pound capacity, could do lead acid or the Clark Fusion lithium drop-in battery. Frankly, from both a sales perspective and a customer's perspective, it's a win-win. For customer, Clark is the only manufacturer that makes that 5,000 pound 3-wheel electric unit. So high capacity retention, tight turn radius. For me and my sales team and our support teams, the fact is that if we can get a customer to explore that 3-wheel 5,000 pound unit, I could kind of box out my competition because nobody else makes that chassis. So it kind of creates a little bit of an environment where we have a value sell for high capacity, tight turn radius, but boxes out my competition, which gives my salespeople a little extra confidence as well.
Love it. I'm going to remember that. Okay, let's talk about the crystal ball. We're always wanting to know, like, what's going to happen? What's coming up in the future? So with all the automation, lithium integration, telematics, all converging, when you look at the roadmap coming out of Clark from an engineering perspective right now, and you just mentioned it, you're excited about some of the new trucks that will be coming out over the next couple of years. Is there something that you're most excited about to be selling, let's say, in a few years from now?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I guess I got to figure out how much I can share. So we are part of the DAG group for Clark's, the dealer advisory group. And there's a lot of models they're working on right now. But, I'd say that there's a couple things that really piqued my interest based on our market. One would be a potential redesign on the high capacity indoor warehouse product called the cushion forklift. So that's the CGC 40 through CGC 70, 8,000 pound through 15,500 pound capacity. That's been a model that is highly utilized in our rental fleet, used for a lot of crane, rigging, and machinery moving industries and paper roll industries. And it's been a model that we've had, like I said, for almost 2 decades now as a highly utilized asset. And I believe that they're coming out with an update that in the next few years. On the same kind of the token from the pneumatic side, they have a high capacity lithium electric unit, potentially 15,000 plus pounds coming down the pipeline. Again, another unit that if I could get that into my rental fleet, into customers' hands, and I think about concrete, building materials like lumber, foundries, steel coils, cable industry, those are units that, again, the ROI becomes very easy if you're used to spending high value on diesel fuel, and now we can flip that over to electric. Especially now, like I said, with the lithium battery costs coming down and Clark launching their own Clark Fusion lithium product, it's going to become more and more competitive, reducing, I'd say, ROI timeframes, at least for major fleet users, below that 16-month mark. Be really a sweet spot for that CFO group.
Gentlemen and ladies, you just listened. You may have also watched Robert Bond very skillfully, as a dealer advisory group member, share things that are very important to him, that he sees what's going on. He's predicting the future a little bit, but he's also not oversharing beyond what he probably is comfortable with. That was amazing, Robert. That was so good. That was very, very, very well done. And thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us today. I mean, this is one of the ways that we like to get to know what's going on inside of Clark. Talking to you has been absolutely a highlight. So much great insight. So to the audience, thanks for joining us on Between the Forks. But Robert, really special, super high five, bringing the insights, the energy, the expertise, and the experience, like you and your whole family. It's very, very impressive. Don't let it go to your head. If you liked what you heard, be sure to follow, rate this, share the podcast. You may be seeing this on the YouTube channel. So if you subscribe to it, by the way, it just means that you'll know when we're putting new content out. And we really want you to know that, because we're pushing a lot of great content your way to help you understand more and more about why Clark matters to its dealers, why its dealers matter to Clark. And hey, we've got a lot more great conversations that are coming your way. So from the ground floor to the top shelf, don't worry about it. Until next time, keep lifting.